It's the morning after Brexit. So was the soundbites from the Martin Downing Street and the rest of the British authorities in terms of this. Let's get Juliana Layinka, my colleague, to start the new week with us on that note. We'll touch about on coronavirus a little bit later. Good morning, Juliana. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Bosun. Nice to see you. Happy new month.
Great. Thank you so much. So this is the morning after. I know you folks have had enough time over the weekend to sleep over the January 31st Brexit. So what's this morning after looking like?
Well, what's it looking like? It's looking like it's going to be a long 11 months. Brexit did indeed happen on Friday. There were a stream of parties, actually, across London and the UK, a few protests and some highlighting outside of Downing Street where the countdown went on. But, you know, the mission is far from accomplished. Today, Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be speaking to some international business leaders and diplomats who have flown into the UK. And really, today is the time that he'll be grandstanding, letting everybody know that he wants to secure a blockbuster trade deal with Brussels in a style similar to Canada, where there are no tariffs, no customs checks, and everything is hunky-dory. Of course, Brussels don't feel the same way. Yes, the Canada trade deal does seem to be working quite well, but the economy of Canada's isn't as big as the economy of Britain. And of course, Canada is thousands of miles away. So the risk of competition is different. The threat of a no-deal Brexit is still very much on the cards, because another thing that Boris Johnson will be saying today is that he will not be falling upon any of his red lines. And Brussels and the EU 27, kind of spearheaded by France's President Emmanuel Macron, say, look, you know, we're happy to give you access to the single market, but only if you play along with EU regulations. And therein really lies the problem, because hardline Brexiteers, and particularly Boris Johnson's government, don't want to fall in line with the EU. They don't want to fall in line with their competitive regulations, their regulations on environment. And if they do, they'll be disappointing everybody who voted for Brexit. So it's going to be a long, lengthy 11 months. But Boris Johnson still feels like a trade deal can be done in that time.
Interested. So how are you folks dealing with the coronavirus scare? Of course, looking at the markets, I failed to introduce Uchenna Minis, who is managing partner at Blue FX Nigeria. He is at our global headquarters, sitting in with me here on the show this morning. You want to say hello to him, Juliana?
Hi, Uchenna.
Hi, Juliana. How are you doing?
Great. So I'm just bringing all of you, both of you
very well.
together.
I can't see you, but I'm sure you're there.
Okay, that's fine.
That's not the voice of Esau and the hands of Jacob. I'm not a minute. Hold it there. Okay, they're going to get Uchenna in the shot for you. But first, let's talk about the health services in the UK. How? Okay, now you can see the two boys down here in Lagos. So you can midwife both of us. Okay, great. So my question, Juliana, is about the health services in the UK. How are they reacting to the coronavirus scare? Are they putting money, extra money on the table?
Well, it's good. They are, you know, everybody in the West. I know even in Nigeria, I've been listening to channels over the weekend, is prepared for the coronavirus. We did confirm on Friday, just about the same time I was talking to you, that we did have our first 2 confirmed cases. We know that now that they are Chinese nationals that were studying within the York area. They were the first 2 confirmed cases of the deadly coronavirus. They're being treated in a specialist hospital. And then we did have, just a couple of hours later, 83 British nationals who had been chartered out of Wuhan. There are a further 11 coming back into the UK this morning. They will also be quarantined. But, you know, they're dealing with it as well as they can. Public Health England say that, you know, they're on alert to make sure that these people are quarantined and they won't have any access to members of the public. And there was also an announcement by the British government that they will be spending £20 million towards trying to find a vaccine. They're working with a company in America. Everybody at the moment is trying to come up with some sort of cure for this. There are different laboratories and medicinal countries that are doing stuff around the world. Britain are working with a company in America, and they have put £20 million. The vaccine isn't expected to be ready for another 6 to 8 months. But everything, they're checking the way they can. There are no flights going into mainland China. Anybody who's coming from that region is being thoroughly checked in airports. So we have to wait and see. But at the moment, even though there are over 300 deaths, and the first death reported outside of China, apparently the death rate is only 2%. So in England, they're telling people to calm down.
Where are the markets right now on these? That's why Uche is here. Uche specializes in online trading, FX, and other assets. So he's interested to know what's happening to the sterling this morning. I'm just trying to check through a negative 0.81% on the pound.
Yeah, the last time I checked, the pound was down 0.33% against the dollar. So £1 will get you about $1.31. FTSE, main equities market, the FTSE 100 opened about 19 points higher, which is not bad considering, of course, Asia markets are doing dreadful at the moment, especially because Apple, one of the largest companies in the world, said they will be closing down their stores in China until the coronavirus is sorted out. So that's a huge story. We are expecting PMI data from manufacturing in the UK. That data should be ready by the time I speak to Chimeze in the afternoon, which should be really interesting because, of course, they did pretty well last month. And so the government will be hoping that the economy is still looking healthy in a post-Brexit Britain phase. Yes,
exactly. I'm looking at the UK PMI, January, the 50 or previous 47.5 is the consensus 49.8. This is part of the early numbers. I'm seeing it's not yet out, but this is what some analysts are putting out right now. UK PMI for January, 47.5 consensus, 50 previous, somewhere in the middle. Uchenna, weighing on this conversation, if this PMI for UK comes in not as sweet as expected, which of course 50 is the benchmark, how will that impact on currency that Juliana was talking about?
So first we could see a bit of downside risk in terms of the British pounds, and as a result, that's based on Boris Johnson reiteration saying that they're not going to follow up the ECG's rules in terms of the trading negotiations going forward. So that is sort of just pushing out that risk into the British pounds. However, from the recent BOE rate decisions, we saw that the MPC then held on those rates. But now it's clearer now that with Brexit happening, we can now see the actual active hands of the Bank of England. So I think now there's going to be that focus on macro data. The Brexit has created that overhang, but now that Britain is technically out of this space, we can now start seeing either would have a bit of easing coming from the Bank of England in that regard.
Juliana, what's the big story for Britishers this morning, the morning after Brexit, currency, the expected PMI and all of that, the coronavirus? What's the big story in the tube this morning as you head into the office?
Well, you know, it's not really a business story, but I would say the terror attack. Of course, you know, we had a terror attack in London, in an area in South London yesterday. So there's a lot of focus at the moment on domestic policy. That seems to have dominated morning headlines. But I've got to say the sound bites coming out of Europe are going to be really important. After Boris Johnson's historic election victory in December, it appears as if business optimism was on the rise, consumer confidence had come back, but now the thought of a no-deal Brexit, which is what worried the equities and the currencies market for months and months and months before that withdrawal agreement was agreed, is really going to start to be picking up. There'll be a lot of anxiety about that. We did hear from one of the Treasury secretaries in the Conservative government this morning saying that Britain doesn't even need a trade deal with the EU, that they're working perfectly fine with their other partners. So as the days and the weeks pick up on that, it'll be interesting to see just how that's reflected in the currencies, because, of course, everybody thought that Boris Johnson would get Brexit done in a way that was good for Britain. But if he's willing to walk away without a deal, then that will rattle a lot of people.
Oh, great. Okay, that's fine. I'm here nursing a cup of coffee, and you guys can manage the Brexit business over there. I'll manage your business on this side of the Atlantic, and Uchenna Minis is managing the FX market. Thank you, Uchenna. And thank you, Juliana, in London, and thank you to all our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. That's the wrap on today's edition of Business Morning. I'll see you again tomorrow, Tuesday, the 4th of February. Have a great day, everyone.